What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Home Slice. Those of you who tuned in to it will have caught that several weeks ago I filmed a comparison between your traditional 4-inch Victorinox paring knife and the Spyderco Z-Cut, which is kind of a adapted and versatile design for a paring knife where you still have quite a fine point. If you can see that, very similar. Fine point, but you've actually got it swept forward, so you got space for your fingers when you're doing roll cuts, and you can do straight cut, kind of like you would with an akiri, straight through to chop, or you can do your slicing or, whatever, in addition to the utility that you get with something like this. So very cool. Also features BD1 in steel, Carpenter BD1 in, which, depending on which way you think about it, is kind of like a steel with the same amount of carbon as 8CR13 MOV, which has then had a nitrogen addition to push its properties closer to like 440C or something like that. But the nitrogen is really working for BD1N. It actually increases the toughness, corrosion resistance, and hardness all in one shot, which is not the case with every steel you add nitrogen to. Laren Thomas at Knife Steel Nerds did a whole video about different steels that have nitrogen additions and how they're benefited and whatnot. Anyway, I'm getting off track because I found in that video I sharpened these both with a Japanese natural stone, and I tried not stropping it because I've been told that you can do that, and just cleaning off all of the swarf and all of the material from the Nagura stone, where you mix up kind of like a slurry, I guess you call it. Rinsed all that off and then really gently finished the edges. But I found with both of these, at least the methods that I was using, left a little bit of a burred or damaged, non-ideal edge apex. The Victorinox sharpness plummeted while the Spyderco's stayed fairly admirable. I was somewhere in the 300s and somewhere in the 700s on the best machine, lower being better. Anyway, coming back to you today, we're going to look at these guys in the microscope, and we're going to take some best measurements because I have sharpened these both utilizing the method that I used to sharpen all my knives with. That's the King soaking whetstone. Guys will be familiar with that. Murray Carter got me started on this guy, and I've put it through its paces. This is a 1000 grit, 6000 grit. I should say before I get into things that this video is no criticism on Murray or any of his methods. He actually does a step where he uses a piece of wood and cuts into the grain or pushes into the grain to fold over the little flaky burr that's there, and then he comes back to the stone to rip it off, and he gets these edges that he can shave his face with, which is pretty awesome. Most people who use this, and usually me, struggle because this 6000 grit stone is very difficult to get that last little foil, that last thin little burr off of the edge without some form of stropping that's kind of substantial. But what I used to do is sharpen 1000 side, 6000 side, and then I do Murray's newsprint strop. I'm going to test the best and see how sharp these guys got. And then I'm going to compare what like a medium skill, or, when I started out, I was a novice with this stone, and I've sharpened the same way that I did when I was a novice. I have a little bit more skill, but I sharpened the same method. So we'll see how fine of a tip and how deburred it looks to do my old sharpening method that I used to do several years back. And we'll test it, look at it in the microscope, look at it on the best machine, and then we're going to pull out the Spyderco Gauntlet. Spyderco has sent me this Gauntlet sharpener. It's one of their fixed angle system sharpeners, and it's sort of a simplified version of the Spyderco triangle sharp maker, but it's got really nice elliptical rods. I'm excited to use them. We're going to just do a bit of a comparison to see bench stone with like a method that a lot of people are using, a similar method to how I sharpen these knives, versus Spyderco preset system, which one gets the edge keener, and then we'll probably take the Spyderco edge and cut through the rope and the cardboard again to compare to my last results off of the Japanese natural stone to see which one kind of holds its edge better. Anyway, this is the first time I've really put this gauntlet to use. I fiddled around with it when I first got it, but let me just do an unbox for you for those of you who might be thinking about getting a product like this. Spyderco makes such cool and cleverly thought out preset systems. I, for one, am a little late to the game. They've been making stuff like this forever and ever, and I always have stubbornly clung to my bench stone hand sharpening methods, but I've really been impressed with these things that they sent me. I've just done a video where we tested the triangle sharp maker with a serrated knife and with quite good results. So if you buy Spyderco Gauntlet, this is the Gauntlet Premium. They have a version that doesn't come with the CBN stones. It just comes with the white ceramic rods, which is good for you if you just need to do maintenance, and if you keep up on your edge, that's all you'll ever need. But la-da! This is what you find when you open up the Gauntlet Premium. There's a beautiful Spyderco instructional. I've read through the instructional packet on the Sharp Maker and also on the Gauntlet, and it's just excellent information, excellently done, visually appealing, easy to understand, awesome stuff. Okay, the next thing you'll observe is your sharpening rods. If you've got the normal Gauntlet, you'll just have these white ceramic guys. These are a very fine ceramic. Oh man, so smooth. These feel really premium because the finish on them and the shaping on them is so precise, and they're a bit longer, so you get a little bit more travel down the stone. With the premium version, you also get these CBN rods. I'm so stoked for these. The reason they came out with these CBN rods, I believe, is because their medium ceramic doesn't take off a lot of material. And they wanted to give their users an option of something that would make a really aggressive edge, but also would reshape and reprofile edges very quickly. So I believe we've got a carbon steel core here, at least their CBN bench stones are made from carbon steel. And then you've got some CBN particles electroplated into the surface of that. If I was to guess, I would say it feels more like their 800 mesh abrasive that I have felt on the flat stone, closer to that than their coarser 400 mesh. I'll take out the little plastic packaging, and here's your gauntlet. Okay, this one's very simple and straightforward. Not a lot of adjustments like the Sharp Maker, so if you prefer to be able to do a bunch of things to get exactly what you want, different angles, different types of tools that you could use it with, then perhaps the Sharp Maker is for you. But I do think that the sharpening experience, if you like this 20-degree angle, and if you want a more simplified approach, is going to be quite nice with the Gauntlet. Quick note, if you get the normal Gauntlet and you want to travel somewhere, they've cleverly injection molded these slits so that one set of stones fits perfectly in here. And so this is a good travel option. You can stow that away in a bag or something, wrap it in a towel. The ceramics are fairly hard, and so they can be broken, so you'd want to be careful with that as they're somewhat exposed. This is it next to the Sharp Maker, so you can see kind of the dimensions are a lot more modest on the Sharp Maker, and it's a little more travel friendly. You also can stash both sets of stones inside the Sharp Maker to travel. So if you're a new customer, new buyer, considering this for Spyderco, I would give the portability, definitely the travel ability, to the Sharp Maker over the Gauntlet, but I think the ease of use is likely to be easier on this bad boy. Okay, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's bring the best machine over and we'll see what kind of numbers these knives are returning off of the King 6000 grit stone. Now, I should mention best machines are good for detecting burr or damaged metal, because if the tip does a lot of flexing or perhaps has a little bit of a foil that squishes against the test line, then it will produce a much, much higher number. And you can figure out, even if it feels quite keen, the best will show you that there's actually some problems at the apex, or the apex is going to give way rather quickly, which some other sharpness testing methods don't do quite as well with detecting those things. This is the number of grams it takes to cut through this standardized test media, which is a little nylon string with some anti-cut cladding on it that makes it a little harder to cut and spreads out the numbers so you can get a good spread of apex keenness. Under 100 is really, really good. Difficult to do by hand, but doable. They say in the best manual, new knives usually ship somewhere between 200 and 350. So we've got 243 for the Victorinox. Todd Simpson over at the Science of Sharp has actually tested this specific stone, the King 6000 grit, and he has often found in his tests that it's very difficult to get rid of that foil burr from the stone without specific stropping methods. I suspect the reason that this feels really aggressive and really keen, but we're still well up over 200, is because we've got a little bit of foil burr that's folding on the line. So 251. Yep, very consistent, very similar numbers between the two knives. They've taken a very similar edge. They both feel really fine. I should mention that I profiled these guys at 15 degrees and then micro beveled them at 20 degrees on the King stone to make sure that when we get to the Gauntlet, which is a 20 degree, that will be touching the edge for sure. All right, let's hop over to the microscope and check out these edges. Okay, this is very clear where the second bevel, I called it a micro bevel, but it's fairly sizable on those, begins. You can see the strokes headed in different directions. And it's also very, very evident that there is a little bit of flaky burr left over. Now, I should make a correction to what I've claimed in previous videos, because the advertisement for this microscope said, hey, it's an HD 1000 times microscope. I've since been corrected by some of my viewers who say, oh, hey, the ratings that they give on the electronic ones have more to do with the area of the little shot to your screen size. So it's not 1000 times optical. It's likely it's more like 20 to 50 times optical. But be that as it may, I'm really pleased that you can see that little problematic burr that the King 6000 grit stone can sometimes lead. I think that's really cool. All right, we've got our gauntlet set up. If you want to take off material really quickly, you can use these corners. The corners concentrate the pressure of the stroke to one area. And then there's different settings because you can present different sides of the stone. This is because if one area of the stone loads up with a lot of metal, then it won't cut as efficiently. And so we'll start out with these corners. They say you're supposed to have this around waist height because it's most comfortable there. So I'm going to go edge trailing and then take a quick best measurement. It's not recommended to go edge trailing on these things, but I kind of want to see, just understand a little bit more about what it does to the edge. And I'm going to see if the best measurement actually goes up or down from what the king did. And then we'll go the way that this is meant to. We'll go on the wide side, edge leading strokes down this direction. And then we'll test and microscope. $2.52. So there you go. That's a very, very good reason to follow the manufacturer's instructions, because that is nearly exactly the same as the numbers that we had from the king. In fact, we'll have to check on the microscope when this is all done to make sure that we did indeed contact the edge. But it does feel, I think, slightly different. Anyway, we'll do some edge leading strokes to ensure that, but edge trailing doesn't seem to get rid of your little foil burr there. This one was at 243. So if that's 245 or something like that, then we'll have a very consistent result. Ooh, 286. So we've definitely got contact on the edge, but we've just trailed that burr out. And this is why it's important to use edge leading strokes. If you don't know the mechanics of it, it's because as the knife travels forward, the abrasives on the stone cause the edge to want to bend over and it snaps off. And when it's a very, very fine abrasive, then it snaps off to a very keen, like almost triangular, low width sort of edge. When you go edge trailing, you usually have to do something after you do it on the stone to remove a little bit of that burr. You also often need to with edge leading, but it's a more pronounced burr creating effect with edge trailing strokes on a microscopic level. Okay. Be quiet, Gabe. Sharpen the knife. Here we go. We'll do 30 strokes and then we'll test it again, all right? All right. I am not well versed with this sharpener, so I am very confident that you can get better results even than what I am about to show, and I am not sure whether it will be better or worse than the numbers I've already given. I offset it a little bit to make sure the Victorinox wasn't rubbing directly in the area where the Z-cut had loaded up to make it fair. And the last pass, I went forward really gently and then back to try to do some deburring on the stone by flipping the direction back and forth, because I've had some good luck at times with that minimizing burr. That said, the best will tell us how we did. All right. Same area. $2.42. I think we'll have to rely on the microscope for that one to see whether we're fully hitting the edge and whether there's some retained burr. It definitely feels different, and it definitely feels cleaner. So we'll have to see how that goes. On to the Victorinox. The Victorinox is a bit softer. It's a bit thinner at the edge. And so usually it takes just a slightly keener initial reading in the initial bess. And then it frequently loses that edge a little bit faster, as you would expect. All right, 291 for the Victorinox. Again, we'll have to take a look in the microscope to see whether we're hitting that edge, whether there's still burr present, or whether perhaps I've messed something up. It's possible they might require more strokes, but let's take a look. Okay, those edges, I mean, you can see they look much more uniform, and the damage or burr characteristics of them are like uniform. There's this shiny bit just at the edge, so it does look like there's a little bit of burr or edge binding out there, but it's been cleaned up quite a bit. Spyderco does say that you may need to strop after using their sharpeners for the ideal edge. To be honest, I mean, give me a second. Okay, this is phone book paper. So just for a little healthy dose of reality, because we found in the last test where I did these also that, look at that. A beautiful edge. So the bess is picking up some really minor flakiness and damage, but that is a beautiful edge. So it's important for all of us nerds, especially me, to remember that sometimes a small lack of perfection doesn't amount to much in terms of user experience. Look at those curves. So very, very, very good edge already. We are going to try lightly stropping this, and then we'll hit it with the rope and the cardboard. So I've got some chromium oxide, pure chromium oxide on a hanging strop. I'm going to try not to wrap it around the edge too much, but see if we can get the compressible nature of that leather to wrap around and just pull the slightest bit of flaky damaged metal. Okay. Let's check out the bess on that. See if we've got a noticeable change. $186. Now we're getting closer to what we want to hear. $201. Huh. Well, that's not bad, but the Spyderco seems to have responded a little bit better to the strop.